The first step is to create white space, to get quiet, to be able to receive the downloads. That's not the whole picture, right? So now you're asking, okay, so once you begin to receive downloads, what's next? Well, first of all, you have to execute. At some point, even God said to Moses, enough praying, let's get moving. The biggest thing that creates the most success for people is desire. Desire is like gravity. If you want less than everything with your life, you're wasting your time. You ever see people that are like, if I could just make this, or if I could just have that? Well, why do we even limit ourselves? Where does that limitation come from? And so the universe doesn't reward small desires. It responds to aligned ones. If you have a desire, a strong desire, you're gonna make things happen.
Welcome back to another episode of the 1% Podcast. I'm your host, Van End.
And I'm Shane.
Today, we're joined by my man, the stud. Well, he's not the host of this one, but he is one hell of a speaker and a podcaster and a coach at that. Craig Siegel. Welcome to the show.
My goodness. No place in the world I'd rather be than right here with you, gentlemen. Thank you for the kind intro. Always great to see you, brother. And I'm excited to go deep today and have some fun.
Of course. That's what you do, man. You are the Lord of Depth, and I absolutely love it. And for those of you that are just tuning in or haven't ever heard of Craig, which I find almost impossible, the man is everywhere, damn it. But he's just a genuine guy. He's a phenomenal coach. He's got an amazing story, and we are blessed enough to hear from him today. And one thing, Craig, that I'm definitely going to ask you about, because I can't stop asking you about it, because I'm always so fascinated with the things you talk about, is especially the deep dive work you've been doing with Kabbalah and how it's been impacting your business. But we'll get into all of that later. Craig, can you please give a intro, because I'll never do justice, and tell the people who you are, what you're building, what you're excited about, and a little bit of your story.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, buddy. And also, I just want to acknowledge you. You sent me the most beautiful video after the event this week, and I really appreciated it. And I love the bond that we have. I think that when it comes to my story, for those that aren't familiar, best place to start would be right before the pandemic. So prior to 2020, like most people, or many people, I should say, based upon statistics, I went down a path that was not exactly full of passion, but because it was what I thought I was supposed to do. Graduated college, went to Wall Street, was always infatuated with making money, who isn't? And I like stocks. And so I spent 13 years on Wall Street, and it was a great season of life. I became a man. I started learning discipline. It was also the time that I began to stumble onto personal development, which ultimately would be my destiny. I just didn't know it at the time. But Wall Street, as you can imagine, at some point started becoming very out of alignment, because I started to grow tremendously and expand. And the premise of what Wall Street is all about no longer aligned with who I was becoming. Nicest way to say it. And so even though I was making a lot of money and things looked really good on the outside, underneath the surface, I was suffocating. It felt as though I was dying a slow death. And a couple things happened at once. Number one, I left my company where I was basically the stockbroker, making a lot of money, and I started my own business. I knew that I needed a bit of a fresh start, but I stayed in the world of finance, just doing something a little bit differently. I had my own company. But ultimately, even though lucrative, I was waking up every day, and it was like I felt like I was a gladiator in the wrong arena. Like, is this really it for me? There's got to be more to life than just clocking in, making money, and then going home and living for the weekends. And so I felt myself in a pretty dark season of life. My best friend, my dad, had just gotten diagnosed with cancer at the time. This is about 2018. He's still battling. I had just got out of a very toxic relationship, which obviously looking back is amazing, but during it, it's no fun. It's really tough. And for career-wise, which you're going to spend a great portion of life in, I was having fun. I was out of alignment. And so I started running marathons. I was just looking for a way to express myself and just build my confidence and expand. And I love running, still running to this day. But ultimately, the end goal wasn't to become a professional. I was just looking to transform. Fast forward the pandemic. Shut down my office for what I thought would be 2 weeks. The whole world stood still for a moment. I'd never experienced that before, guys. And my thought process was, if not now, then when? For the first time in my adult life, I couldn't even work if I wanted to. And so that's when I really started connecting. For me, that's creator, God, you guys might call it source, divine, universe, quantum, Jesus, Hanukkah, Harry, whatever's good for you. I just started connecting and I started getting these downloads because it was very quiet. There were white space. And personal development was something I became obsessed with over the years. I utilized it to rebuild my mindset and to understand the law of attraction. I used that to be quote unquote successful in other areas. I just didn't realize that personal development was my calling. And so I took that time and I created my CLS brand and I started putting it out there. At the time, I had no followers, no celebrity friends, no connections, but I had ultimate conviction that what I had to share was valuable. And that's all I cared about. And I started sharing. And for the first time in my life, guys, I was in alignment and doors began to open. The universe really liked that. Over the last 5 years, built a huge business, coaching very high level people, speaking all over the world, including the United Nations, throw in events, which Vin was just at, built a 0.05% podcast sponsored by Mark Cuban, community, TED Talk, Wall Street Journal, best-selling book, the Reinvention formula, and my favorite part, married my soulmate, all within the last few years. And for the first time in my life, I was in alignment. And ultimately, where I think a misconception is people think that you can't do what you love, find your gifts, and make money. And I'm here to say you can absolutely do that and make even more money than you ever thought possible. So that was a little bit of a long-winded answer, but at least now your listeners have some context from rock bottom and basically just existing to creating a life of total alignment and prosperity.
Listen, they needed that long answer because there's no way that you could have fit that into anything less. And if they don't understand your story, man, they ain't gonna understand just how important the rest of this podcast is gonna be, because everything you're gonna say, I know from experience of talking to you, is something that you've done. You're not the coach that's been like, hey, I got an ICF certification and I've never run a business or been through anything crazy or hard, but you could do it, right? You're a man who speaks from genuine integrity and a space of doing, not just talking. So thank you for sharing your story with us, my man.
My pleasure.
I think it's absolutely crazy that you went for 13 years into a completely different world, and then you actually just had some quiet time and completely revolutionized your entire existence. From professional to personal, my very first question is, what piece of advice would you give? Is it just to sit down in a quiet space and think about your life and think about your wants? Is it as simple as that?
Yes and no, because I think a word that comes to mind is intentionality. Everybody should flex the muscle of being intentional with their life. And so I was not being intentional for quite some time. I knew that I was out of alignment. I knew that I was burnt out. And guys, by the way, when we did our TED Talk, I was preparing, I was looking at the data. Only 20% of Americans actually find purpose in the work that they do. That means 80% of people don't like their job. That's pretty alarming, pretty crazy. But I connect to it because I was one of those cats. And so the lockdown, I like to say the lockdown, not the pandemic per se, that forced white space is what I call it, allowed me to get quiet and to really connect. And if you think about what intuition is, it's the best ideas ever, right? Where do they come from? Probably a whisper from creator. And for those of you like, well, how do you know that intuition's so powerful? Let me ask you this. Have you ever had an intuition and then gone against it? Has it not bit you in the butt every single time? So what was that, right? And so in order to be able to receive intuition and downloads, have to be quiet. On Wall Street, go, going 100 miles an hour and always grinding is not the way. And what I've learned, and this is what I want to share with you guys, is that the biggest ROI does not come from doing and grinding. The biggest ROI comes from being and connecting. That doesn't mean that you don't have to get off your butt and make stuff happen. But to really get quantum leaps and go to your next level, you need to be able to create that white space to get those downloads, to reevaluate, reassess, and become intentional. And so for everybody listening, don't wait till a global pandemic like I did to find that white space. Actually create the time and even put it in your calendar.
I don't know what that means intentionally. I think the work ethic that you've essentially established during Wall Street and your intuition that you have of reinventing yourself and your purpose is phenomenal, but you did it. I think that's the difference between the 0.5, the 1%. is you actually did something. You took that intuition and you ran, and look what's happened in the last 6-7 years. Everything's fucking happened for you. I think that's absolutely phenomenal. But I want to take a second to come back to what you're talking about, because I think there's a lot more than just the principles and then just the overview. I guess, can you just elaborate on what you just said?
The whole thing?
So you're talking about this white noise. You're talking about essentially having alone time with yourself and getting this white noise so you can create intuition and you can go for it. That sounds great. But then what? You need to establish this drive to actually do it, right? I think I'm just trying to find something a little deeper than this. And maybe that's what's actually in the book. But, and I personally want it. Because, for instance, my bottlenecks, and I just want to tell you, because I haven't found somebody who's able to overcome them. I've grown my business to 500 plus employees. I've gotten to a point where it's at a steady, regular basis that I'm out. I've been out of the day-to-day. My biggest problem is I'm afraid of what to do next if I exit because of that purpose. So I've heard the alone time. I've hired business coaches that have been at higher successful places than I have. So I'm waiting. I read audiobooks to get these crazy great ideas to inspire something bigger. How do you just find this purpose through meditation, through quietness, through eliminating the void? I think hopefully that helps me kind of describe or get a better explanation or a bigger explanation, or maybe it's just hiring you. But I'm just trying to associate it with my life.
A couple things. Number one, you asked me what's the first step. So the first step is to create white space, to get quiet, to be able to receive the downloads. That's not the whole picture, right? So now you're asking, okay, so once you begin to receive downloads, what's next? Well, first of all, you have to execute, right? At some point, even God said to Moses, okay, enough praying, let's get moving. But the biggest thing that creates the most success for people is desire. Desire is like gravity, right? If you want less than everything with your life, you're wasting your time. You ever see people that are like, if I could just make this, or if I could just have that? Well, why do we even limit ourselves? Where does that limitation come from? Right? So the universe doesn't reward small desires. It responds to aligned ones. So you have to be able to awaken a desire. If you have a desire, a strong desire, you're going to make things happen, right? So in the wisdom of Kabbalah, we call that a vessel or a capacity, meaning everything that you want out there is not something that you have to chase. It's already here. It's about expanding your capacity to be able to receive it. So when people set really, really big, audacious goals, or they have a big vision, oftentimes when it gets a little tough or uncomfortable, they like to shrink the vision. I would say never, ever, ever shrink the vision. Instead, expand yourself so you could be a match. So that's the first thing is to get the white space, to flex the muscle of your desire and get after it. You're talking about purpose. You mentioned that things are pretty good for you right now. It feels like it might be time to do something else, but you're scared, or there's a fear that you don't know what that next thing is or what the purpose is. Am I hearing that correctly?
I just hear all the time of people who have exited their company and they retire too young, and then they turn into alcoholics. They're completely miserable because they associated their purpose with their success, with their previous success, with the previous company. And that purpose, because it was associated with that job title, ownership, business, they now feel worthless.
Yeah. Can we go deep?
That's what you're known for, man. I love the goal ambition, by the way, and kind of expanding and not limiting yourself too, but limiting the goals.
So Shane, big question, but who are you?
God-fearing man. I'm a husband. I'm a father of two. I'm a business owner. I would say that's a good overall foundation of myself.
Business owner. That's something that you do in this human experience, right? And maybe you've identified as a successful entrepreneur, but that's not really who you are, right? It's what you do. Mm-hmm. Who you are is unlimited, right? Everybody's definition of who they are becomes limited through their human experience, right? So consciousness, just the word awareness, I think if you just break that down, and the definition is who you really are, not who you've been taught you are, who you think you are. And who both of you guys really are is unlimited, right? And so whatever it is that you want to do, you're going to bring the traits that made you successful in whatever it is that you do now. You're not identifying as just that. And I think that it's very understandable that based upon prior experiences or other stories, you don't want to end up like other people who left something and felt such an identity crisis that they felt like now they were stuck. They had nothing left. But that's not who you really are. And so the idea is to elevate your awareness and your consciousness to realize that this thing that you've had a ton of success in was just something that you did. It's not really who you are. And as a result, if you pivot, change, sell this, go into anything else, who you're always going to be is unlimited. And you're never going to be tied to that specific identity.
How do you absorb that properly with what just happened?
Go meditate on it.
I don't have context, I imagine, on what you're referring to, what just happened. But the reason why, and I'll just share this, and then we had Brian Dawkins on the podcast. You guys know, NFL Hall of Famer. And I remember he was telling me, really, he was like, when I stopped playing football, I didn't know who I was anymore.
Right.
Because that was such a big part of his quote unquote identity. But then he was able to elevate his awareness to such a place that he knew that football is not who he is or was. It's just something he did.
Right.
And so it's all about, everything is about elevating your conscience and your awareness to such a place that you are unlimited.
That if the next question isn't how, and I think that's essentially just either going to the coaching sessions or actually finding more about what this actually book entails. But that obviously is the next question. How do you get to unlimited, especially with a society, not even talking about success or business owners, society associates themselves with their job. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, that's all going to be eliminated by AI, by robotics, right? So now it's re-identifying society, humanity into this unlimited status. How do you do this? How do you get to this level mentally to saying, I'm everything, I'm unlimited, my potential's unlimited?
Beautiful question. And we could probably spend a couple hours just on this answer alone. I think consciousness is everything. And look, I just want to share from our podcast, I used to think that billionaires were the most powerful people. Now I realize the most powerful people that I've spoken to or that I'm in proximity with are the people that are the most spiritual, because their consciousness is so high that they could create a billion like that, right? But that's not necessarily their first priority. So being able to elevate your level of awareness is the key. And so I think it starts with identifying what's true and what's actually the truth, right? And so, for example, the truth with a capital T is really just two things right now. That's that all three of us are having an experience and that we're all existing. Anything else that we perceive to be true to us is only what we made true for us. And we can change that. We can transform it. We can make something else true for us. And so it's being able to identify what is your default programming, questioning it, right? So whose voice is this particular belief? Is it even mine? Right? And so people with low consciousnesses are just programmed and being robotic. So being able to pause and take a moment and really just reassess what's happening here gives you an elevated consciousness and helps you build your level of awareness, right? So first and foremost, something tangible, I would just encourage everybody to challenge your truths, right? So if you think I'm good with money or successful, whether that's true, or I'm not good with money or I'm not successful, whether that is real or not is irrelevant. It's just become true for you. And we can begin to question that and change what's true for us. And by doing that, you elevate your consciousness.
I have something to weigh in here too, because I love this topic. And I think a big part of what's missed by most people is that these identities become all of who they are, because as humans, we need stuff to associate with, right? That's how we get through life. It's subconsciously programming ourselves like, oh, who are you? What do you do? Well, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a dad. And those are all things that you do. They're part of your identity, and that's true, but they don't have to be the whole. And so I love what Craig's talking about, because he's talking about basically having no attachments so that you can move into these higher levels and these new levels, because attachments hold you down, but the freedom is in letting go of these attachments. And so Craig's stuff is powerful, man. It's on point. I love it, Craig.
I love what you just added. Just want to add one thing to that. So
Yeah.
this idea of consciousness and desire, I think, are the most important things. And so to just leave your community with, the idea is to expand our vessel or our capacity on what we can receive, right? So how do you expand your desire and awaken that? So you receive to the level of your vessel, meaning certain people have a certain capacity on what they are able to receive. The good news is by doing this work, we can stretch it, right? So Shane, you might be someone that's really good with money. I don't know. Maybe you're accustomed to making millions of dollars and so forth. There's other people that might have the same skills as you, but have a smaller vessel. And so anytime they make over 100 grand, they start to get anxious and they figure out ways to self-sabotage, right? So desire is spiritual gravity. It pulls things towards you. And when desire is weak, life feels kind of flat. But when it's strong and it's connected, you become magnetic, right? So I don't want to get too far into this, but in something in Kabbalah we call the light, just energy, fulfillment, abundance, everything that people desire. The more light that you bring in, the longer the fulfillment lasts, it sticks. And so just something I would just invite you to consider, Shane, is if the thing that you're doing right now is no longer making you fulfilled, or you don't feel like it's revealing a lot of light for you, that's great feedback.
You know, there's one more thing that you said there, and I think this is really important for the listeners to even pay attention to in their own lives, because I've experienced this and I've gratefully broken past it. There was a point in my life and my business where I was so focused on like what I wasn't able to do, right? Or what I wasn't able to achieve, my capacity, always wanting more. And I would always say it and I would verbalize it because I knew it was happening to me. I would hit a certain income amount and then I wouldn't get any new clients. And then I would lose clients. I would freak out, but the money would always go back, but it would never exceed. And I was always stuck at this moment of this point in time where the income would always be the exact same. And I would always lose clients and gain clients, but it never exceeded. If I got a big client, I would lose 3 small ones. If I lost 1 small client, I wouldn't get any new clients. And so what you're talking about, which I think is really powerful, and this is definitely deep into the spiritual realm, is people have to pay attention. Your current functioning is your current capacity. Where are you currently at? What do you need to do? What's the light you need to bring in? What's the white noise you need to create, or the white space you need to create so you could get there? Like, guys, Craig is dropping bombs. I hope you're freaking paying attention here.
I love what you just shared. A word that comes to mind, or a phrase, is energetic set point, right? And the idea is to continuously raise your energetic set point so that your floor is rising. So where a bad year back in the day might be like barely even breaking even, as you continue to raise your energetic set point, a bad year now might be a best year a couple of years back. And it's to constantly be expanding your capacity to raise that energetic set point. Kind of similar to what you were describing, but I love the way that you articulated that.
Craig, what got you? Oh, sorry, Shane, did you have a different question? What were you going to say?
I want to know your core values.
Very stern. You guys
Tell me your value.
2 totally different personalities. I love it. Craig's core values. So I work within a system called the light, which is from Kabbalah. And basically everything should be done clean, right? From a higher consciousness, I like to give with no agenda, no need for recognition. Integrity is extremely important to me. Loyalty is important to me. I'm a Taurus, sometimes loyalty to a fault. People who do things the right way, that work hard, that want to make a difference, and that don't have an ulterior motive or an agenda or a need for recognition. So I think integrity is something that really stands out to me. It's really dominant. And then we can go deeper with core values and so forth. But my family means everything to me, and just doing the right thing. And look, I'm nowhere near perfect, but I'm a lot better than I used to be. And nobody's perfect. Nobody's righteous. It's a lifelong transformation. We're all doing the best that we can, and other people have bigger desires to become even better. But just always looking to do the right thing and give and to help people. And what I've noticed by really focusing on that, the byproduct on the other side is so much more abundance, light, and fulfillment. But it's the byproduct. You're not giving to receive. You're actually just giving to give. And then the back end is so much more abundant. So those are a couple of things that come to mind as you ask that question.
So much truth in that statements, how you said it, what you said. It just didn't sound like it was scripted. I truly believe everything that you're saying. And it just makes me want to be your best friend, like right now.
He's already mine, Shane. Back off. Back off.
And also, I want to find out more professionally as well. It's somewhat leading to this. What are your, I'm very, very curious because of the previous answer that you gave of unlimited. What's your goals professionally? We could stick with that. What are your professional goals here? What do you wish to achieve outside of world dominance, whatever that, terminology means to you?
I want to make the biggest difference possible. So over the last 5 years since we started CLS from nothing, didn't even have a laptop, just putting out content on my iPhone, not afraid to take messy action. It's grown substantially. Millions of dollars, employees, community, obviously the book, the podcast, all the things. That's great. I'm having a lot of fun, which is really important too. But how do we take this message, which seems to be resonating with you guys, and expand it to such a capacity that we can help so many more people? So all the things that we're doing, figuring out ways to scale. We have a lot of support now on the team, which has been very helpful. A lot of times at the beginning, I was wearing too many hats, and I was spending a little bit too much time in logistics as opposed to just teaching, coaching, and speaking and all that stuff. I'm sure we could all relate to that when you're starting a business. Now I have support. Vin was just at our event last week. It was the biggest one to date, 60 people. People flew in from all across the country. It was beautiful. The next one's in October. The goal for that one is 500. But how do we go from 60 to 500 just with that, but keep that level of energy and intimacy intact? That's the challenge. It's a great question. It's a big question. It's things that I'm still figuring out. Just want to continue to expand this message in the biggest way possible, brother. Probably not the sexiest answer, but just being honest.
That's a good answer.
I agree.
I got a question for you too. Going into the spiritual journey, it takes time, right? Like when you look at, for instance, I like the psychological background of things. When you look at Maslow's hierarchy, I know that people can't really get to the levels of spirituality that they aspire to or should aspire to, purely because maybe they're not able to see if they could feed themselves, or they don't know how their housing's going to be, whatever it is, meeting the needs of certainty and climbing that ladder of spirituality. Did you in your journey have to go through that ladder? Did you feel like maybe you jumped a few rings on the ladder to get to spirituality? Was it always a part of the depth of you? But like, what was that process of getting from like survival, or maybe you were never in survival, but was that aspect of just moving through needs from basic to expansion?
I love it. How much time do we have? I don't think anyone's ever asked me that quite like that. And it's interesting because I was always a big believer in masculine energy, grind, hardest worker in the room, took pride in that. And then at some point you realize that can only get you so far. And so over the years, I would tap into different modalities of spirituality, law of attraction, quantum physics, this and that. But it wasn't until 2 years ago, April 2023, I went to a new moon class of Taurus at the Kabbalah Center. And I really gravitated towards that wisdom. And I wouldn't put Kabbalah on anybody else. Obviously, do your own thing. But Kabbalah is misunderstood. It's not a religion. It's a spirituality. It's the blueprint for the human soul. So whether you're a Christian, a Buddhist, a Jew, whatever it is that you subscribe to, it will help you form a stronger connection with your thing. It's 4,000 years old. It's before there ever was man-made religion. And even if you think about what does it mean to be spiritual? I think it just means that you believe that there's something else going on here beyond our logic.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can connect to that, you're spiritual.
Right.
But Kabbalah decodes the Bible and the Torah and stuff. It shows you how to tap into the universal laws. Just like there's gravity, someone went behind the window behind me, went down. Even if they're an amazing human, they're going down. There's universal laws that you can connect to get more connected with what we might say the light of the creator. More fulfillment, more abundance, more prosperity, less chaos, less victim mentality, and just a whole lot more good in the world. And so over the last 2 years, I'd say I expedited my spirituality a great deal. That was a turning point for me, which really shifted. I started bringing that wisdom into my business in all areas of life. The business went to new heights, obviously got married and everything in between, even running faster in marathons and so forth. So that moment for me was pivotal.
Mm. And when do you think somebody's ready to do that?
When you start questioning that there's got to be a better way than just grinding, right? Or everything that's going on here is just all that there is. When you start questioning that, it's a great time to get more curious, to call that in, whatever it looks like for you, right? Read a book on quantum physics, watch the movie Oppenheimer, law of attraction, Kabbalah, anything that you desire. There's so much. It's so funny because the name of your guy's show is 1%, right? Mm-hmm. So in the wisdom of Kabbalah, it said that everything that's going on here in this world is 1%. And everything else that's unseen, all the magic and the spirituality is the 99%. And the idea is to connect to that. That's how you manifest, and then you bring it to the 1%. And so I don't think it's a bad time for anybody to start getting curious about what's really happening here, or how you can be more connected, or how you can begin to manifest more fulfillment and abundance in your life. Don't wait as long as I did. I would encourage everybody to get curious about it as soon as possible.
Mm. That's like the pure definition of faith, is believing in a higher power, believing that there's something better than what's currently in front of you, whatever denomination that you currently feel. But there's very big reasons why spirituality, religion are beneficial to every single person. I definitely back that statement up. Okay, I got to switch gears here to my personality. Your business coaching, walk me through this. Give me the outline here of your mindset coaching here, and as far as like an overview of what to expect if I'm an active client or an eager client, potential client coming on. I'd love to hear an actual overview of this, and then associated with that, if you can attach a piece of advice of people who are lost, or just a general piece of advice, I think that'd be great.
What I do with my clients and my community is very different or unorthodox compared to other people that might identify as a business coach. I bring a lot of spirituality into it, especially the business, because I believe in the universal laws and the wisdom of Kabbalah. And when you bring that consciousness into the business, you're able to quantum leap and expand it to all new levels than if you're just doing incremental steps. And so the whole idea is to begin to identify the negative tendencies within ourselves or our business practices or how we're operating, and begin to correct and transform those. And as we begin to do that, we begin to open up portals of opportunities for expansion. So definitely a weird answer, probably not the one that you were expecting. Obviously, mindset is very important, right? Because you can't be pessimistic or think small and expect to get big results. But the spirituality component, I think, is the most underrated that there is. And I think that if you don't get the consciousness right, or the level of awareness, and obviously the mindset, then the best playbook won't even matter, because at some point you'll figure out a way to self-sabotage it. So it's not a one size fits all. It's a case by case. I meet people where they're at. I do have a curriculum, but again, you got to meet people where they're at and figure out what's going on in their movie and what are the things that we could begin to transform, to correct. And it could be very uncomfortable at first, because basically we're holding up a mirror. We're saying, all right, what are the things that need to be corrected right now? But ultimately, from my experience, that leads to the most expansion.
In the
Second part of
beginning,
your question was advice, right? I think that there's a couple reasons why we're here. I think that one is to contribute, do some good in the world. But maybe more importantly, it's on us to identify what our unique gifts are that were given to us, because they're not ours, we're the managers of them, and figure out a way to identify and actualize and bring those into the world in some capacity. And I believe wholeheartedly that when you bring your gifts into the world and you're in alignment, you will make more money, you'll have more prosperity and abundance, but most importantly, you'll activate fulfillment. You'll do a lot of good in the world. And so let's just say you're at a good job right now, quote unquote, good job, you're making money, you're paying the bills, but it's not why you're here. Look, the riskiest thing that we can do is to play it safe. It's absolutely our responsibility to find out what makes us tick, what is our thing, and find a way to bring that into the world. And I want to reiterate, it's not that or money, it's that and even more money, but do it for the right reasons.
Tell him. Playing small is canceled.
That's right. You didn't get the memo?
It must have been stuck in the Xerox machine. No. So I absolutely love as being one of your friends and one of your fans, which is both a privilege to say. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about your book, right? The Reinvention Formula. It's such a powerful, catchy title, but obviously it's more than that, right? It's a bestseller. It's a bestseller for a reason. It's not some crap that people should read and maybe they get inspired by, right? It's not inspo porn. It's real actionable steps. What's the meat in the Reinvention Formula for some of our listeners that might be curious about grabbing the book, right? Can you give us an overview of it? Like how does it help people?
Yeah. Inspo porn.
You like that, don't you?
I love you, buddy.
you couldn't have let that one slide in, huh? You had to bring that one up again.
No, listen, man. There's personal development junkies out there. They read books and do nothing, and they're always like, "Oh, I'm improving myself." It's like you're not. You're just inspo porn. You're stuck on it. It's like dopamine hits, right? The false growth.
It's true. There's people that are attached to consuming but not executing.
Yeah.
So reinvention gets an interesting rap. Our whole TED Talk was based upon reinventing reinvention. And so, yes, I did literally reinvent my life professionally, my wife, all the things. But when I think of reinventing yourself, it's the journey back to yourself before your limiting beliefs, before the assumptions, before the gremlins, before the BS, before you allowed life to tell you who or what you can't be. It's back to the real version of you, which is how we started this conversation today, unlimited. And when you go back to that and you begin to reinvent yourself to your soul's assignment, why you came here, then there's nothing off the table. There's nothing off limits. In the book, I do share a bit about my story and how I built the brand and all that stuff. But really, it's about all the personal development and modalities that I've acquired over the years and then put into practice. It is the spirituality. It is the mindset. It's the NLP. It's a law of attraction. It's a little bit all over the place. I think that if you're into expanding yourself and trying to find out what your purpose is, how to bring that into the world, how to make money, relationships, building a brand, and everything in between, the book's probably for you. I take pride in saying it's pretty universal. I think everybody will get at least a nugget or 5 from it. But yeah, anybody that knows deep down that they're here for more, for something bigger than they're currently settling for, then I would invite you to lean in.
You know, I have a question for you too. I think this one's probably going to be really important to anybody who's listening. Honestly, life is difficult. It's meant to be, right? The problems that we have are directly correlated to the privileges that we have of living the life that we're living. Yet it's very hard to understand that sometimes. And so people get stuck in their pains. They get stuck in these problems, not realizing these are the things they need, that they want, that they ask for, or just that sometimes they're an inherent part of life. How do you overcome difficulty, or how do you think people should overcome difficulty? How do they get to that place of being able to accept it, see it, and put it down and walk away? Because most people's suffering is self-inflicted, right? Pain is inevitable, but suffering is the infliction we cause upon ourselves. How do you see pain? How do you overcome hardship? One last thought on that before you answer is, like, in the fire department, we had these great t-shirts, part of the fitness unit, and they used to say train for life. And I believe that a lot of us maybe aren't aware that we need to be training for life and we're just training for these day-to-day things. But how do you navigate the really hard situation?
It's like dropping a bomb right at the end. It's not such a simple answer, but it's a beautiful question. And I think that first and foremost, it's to get away from the victim consciousness, the victim mentality, poor me, or why did these things happen to me? And to assume responsibility for everything. That's a tough pill to swallow sometimes, especially when some, pretty messed up things have happened. Well, how do I take responsibility for that? It's just a consciousness. It's taking responsibility. And then understanding that everything that does happen in our movie is not a coincidence, right? So it could be to propel us and promote us to something bigger and better, but we want to make sure that we learn the lesson, right? So things have happened to me, absolutely. You'll see in the Reinvention formula, for those that read it, even a couple of years ago, I was training for a marathon out of nowhere, or so it seemed. There was a tumor in my foot that I had to get taken out, get surgery. Still ran the marathon after that. That's kind of messed up. The next year, I was walking in New York City, got smashed by a car. I was on foot, hit me, went through 2 red lights, out, hit and run. I was okay. Physically, mentally, I was shaken up a little bit. So those are definitely things that can make you question, like, why did these bad things happen for me? But I don't choose to participate in that consciousness. Now, it's okay to have a moment, right? The idea is to never say that you're not going to go to a dark place. The idea is to commit to the amount of time you're going to spend in that dark place, right? So you want to minimize the time there. And just understand that things happen for a reason. I really want to find out why. What is the lesson that I need to learn here? Or maybe you are just being detoured and directed somewhere better. That's a consciousness, that's a choice, right? And if bad things keep happening, I think that's probably indication that there's something at the soul level that we really need to go deeper on and begin to correct and transform.
What if it's something that you have less responsibility over? Like, what if, we go to an extreme example. What if it's like your mom passes away, right? Like, I think that will be one of my darkest days. How does somebody prepare for dealing with that? Is there still a level of responsibility they could take? How do they get through a hardship that maybe isn't as, tangible as like getting hit by a car?
That's not your fault, right? So even just 2 weeks ago, we lost a team member. Beautiful angel named Alex, who was on our team from the very beginning of CLS. I probably spoke to her, I would say, every single day for 4 years straight. And she passed unexpectedly young. That was a very, very tough pill to swallow. And look, I'm going to have moments of sadness, absolutely. But I'm also going to put more energy into honoring her and the way that she lived and what I could do with her legacy and how I can embody her beautiful spirit. That's my choice, right? And so look, I have both my parents here right now, thank God. They're not that young. So at some point, it's possible that I might have to experience something that you just referenced. Hopefully not for a very long time. But what's the perspective, right? Like how thankful are you for the time, the lessons, the intimacy, the love? How can you honor them? Being sad that something like that happens, I don't think that's a negative. But you don't want to sit in the frequency of sadness all the time. At some point, you have to pull yourself out, right? So that's an interesting example that you gave, and it's hard to take responsibility when something like that happens. But what do you want to do with it? What's the perspective, or the meaning, I should say, that you give it?
Yep. And that's your responsibility.
Correct. Nailed it.
Damn right. I love it. Craig, we're coming up towards the end of our time here, which I don't even want to end this. Can we just extend this like 5 hours? Can we cancel everything else going on today? Make this the longest episode in our history yet, but unfortunately we can't. I got a few final questions for you. One of them being this. Our show is the 1% podcast, as you know, and it's not about being billionaires, but it's more about how do you show up in a way that excels greatly, or that you're excelling greatly? How do you conquer and dominate parts of life to be in that top echelon of people? And our question to you is, what is your version of a 1% life?
The answer to the first question, the way that you keep quote unquote dominating and ascending is to keep expanding your capacity or your vessel. This way you can receive more of what's already here. That's the idea, right? We desire things, but we don't have the capacity to receive them. So we're always chasing them. So what's one thing that you could do to stretch yourself and expand your capacity to receive what it is that you desire? Put yourself in uncomfortable situations. How patient would you be willing to be to sit in discomfort? Because most people are not very patient when it comes to sitting in discomfort. They want instant gratification. How does that turn out? It's like a spark of light, right? And then down. It's like high and then bye. But being able to sit in the discomfort and really expand and stretch yourself creates new energetic set points where you can now achieve to new levels. And if you're doing the inner work on that constantly, you will keep expanding and you will keep ascending. And it's as simple as that. But I know a lot of people aren't willing to do that. Second part of your question was, what does it mean to live 1% life? Again, it's so funny because I imagine not everybody is connected to wisdom of Kabbalah like I am, but I did share that one of the premises that 1% is the physical world, 99% is the rest. I would just say, when I think most people think of the 1%, think of the rare select few that are willing to do what most people won't to get to a whole nother level, to continue to go to their next level and so forth. And most people say they want to do things, but they're not really willing. There's a big difference between being interested and being committed, right? So how bad do you want it? How committed are you? What are you willing to do? How much discomfort are you willing to sit in to keep getting to that next level and to be in the 1%, so to speak? And so that's what it means to me.
All right, Craig, next question for you. What is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
The best piece of advice that I've ever received was that if you desire less than everything, you're wasting your time.
I like it.
Can I add a little something to that?
Sure.
Do you have kids?
Not yet. I do have a furry one, but not a human one yet.
I guess this is more of a comment here. My desire for everything shifted. I'd be curious because I want to maintain a relationship with you and to see if your perspectives change when you have somebody that is more than yourself. Because as soon as my son and daughter were born, my complete priorities shifted to, I need to make sure that I could be the best version of myself so that these kids have a life better than my own. But I still don't think that changes anything for what you just said. Like, now speaking it out loud, I'd just be curious on how your mindset evolves or shifts, even if you do have kids. Because it's just something that you just can't explain when you actually have them. It's a love that you just never feel once it's actually there. So I'm just wondering if your chase, if your hunger, if your desire, your the pod for everything actually shifts now to the kids. And I know that's a loaded question you really can't answer.
Great, and I appreciate it. There's a difference between priorities and desire. It makes sense that once you had this human that you're responsible for, that your priorities would shift. I do think, however, that you should still unapologetically desire it all. To be the best dad, to give them the best life, to have the most fulfilling career, to make the most money, to have the best relationship with your spouse, to be the best son, and so forth. I think that just adds another desire to the list. Prioritization absolutely makes sense that would be a big shift when your kid was born.
I see. So the vessel essentially still stays the same, unlimited, but essentially the priorities shift in that vessel.
Well, our vessel isn't unlimited. Otherwise, we would have everything that we desire. The whole goal of life is to continuously expand the vessel to be that match for the things that you just said. But everything else that you mentioned, I agree with.
The last two things that I wanted to mention are coming from Craig specifically, that I'm going to spend some time today is challenging your truths, and really essentially diving deep into that and your negative tendencies, and actually writing them down and going through that uncomfortableness. I'm going to spend some time on to reevaluating myself. I think that's phenomenal. I've never heard something like that before.
Beautiful. Love that for you, brother. Share with me if you're open to it. I'd love to hear what comes through for you.
Shane will do it. Shane, do it. All right. Final question for you. The question that should be on everybody's mind after this podcast. If you don't have this question, stop listening to our podcast because you're not a fan.
Amen.
Craig, how do people get in touch with you, get involved in your communities? How can they get more into the CLS brand? And just give them that info.
Anywhere you listen to podcasts, the CLS Experience. Anywhere you buy books, the Reinvention Formula. Social media, we're at Craig Siegel _CLS. We have website, community, coaching, speaking, all that stuff. I think that if something we said today really resonated with you, text me. We have a texting community. It's totally free. Text 917-634-3796 and text Vin and Shane so that I know that you heard it here and I'd love to connect.
All right. There you have it, folks. The illustrious stud of a human, Craig Siegel, dropping bombs, changing lives, expanding vessels, and enhancing your capacity. Go check out his stuff. Be a part of his community. Text him unlimited because of the fact that he offered. No, I'm just kidding. Don't don't do that. But seriously, get connected with Craig. You won't regret it. I've had the privilege of connecting with him a few years ago, and I've never regretted it once. In fact, I've only been thankful for it. Tune in for another episode. I don't know. This is I'm left in a sense of awe here. I don't even know about how to finish this properly. But with that being said, yeah, Craig, stick around for a minute after the show. I got something else to tell you. But thank you so much for being here, man. It's been a blessing and a pleasure. We appreciate you. I hope our audience appreciates you. And again, just thanks for joining us today. Guys, as always, like, follow, share, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you thought of the episode and tune in for another one of hanging out with Shane, and another phenomenal guest. As always, I'm your host, Vin, and
I'm Shane.
that was Craig, everybody. See you later.
Bye, guys.